Hi there, I'm Ben Jones. Welcome once again to the Dukascopy TV studio. Alongside me for a special interview looking at interest rates in some of the major economies is Roland Duss. Roland, thank you very much for coming in today.
You're welcome.
Can you begin by discussing for us some of the pros and cons of the current low interest rates? Are there particular sectors that benefit more and particular sectors that are hindered by these low interest rates?
Well, context of low interest rates was absolutely necessary in the Western world after the financial crisis to avoid entering into a depression. A central bank had no choice but to have an aggressive monetary policy in order to help fund the government deficits, in order to try to stimulate investments with low interest rates, and then as well to create some wealth effect, which are always good for consumption. And they had also to bet on de-saving, i.e. Pushing people to spend rather than to save. The problem was rather obvious. We had a huge slack in the labor market, and we had also too much overcapacities of production. The negatives of a context like that is, of course, retirees. Retirees are penalized because they get far less income for their investment. The other negative is that it makes that the government do not do any efforts to improve their public finances, i.e. bringing the problem of less growth in the future. And third, it forces investors to take more risks because there is no income generated. They have to look for it elsewhere. The sectors that benefit of low interest rates are obviously those who benefit of the cheap funding. That's the housing sector, the car sector, construction sector, and then we can also add to that the white goods, durable goods. People can then go on credit and buy them, and that stimulates the demand there. On the equity side, the sectors that benefit a lot are those that provide fat dividends, because of course investors look for income that is superior to bonds. They find that, of course, in the so-called defensive sectors, utilities, telecom, the REITs, some parts of the energy sector, food, pharma. The sectors that are hindered by low interest rates are mostly banking sector, because of course not only did they have a tougher time with the legal frame for their investments, but of course they had less remuneration on their bond portfolios, which means the return on equities, on their own equities is lower. They are also being penalized by the credit that have been granted. They grant credit a little bit more easily because money is cheap. And then the problem you may face sooner or later is, of course, bad credits. And this is particularly the case in the US with the student loans, which is now a nightmare of bad loans. Another risk or sector that is at risk is investors that have piled into long maturity bonds. The risk there is, of course, that the 20 basis point increase in the yield will trigger a 2% drop of the value of their capital. So that is something that you have to take into consideration.
Okay, now which of the world's major economies do you think will be first to raise their benchmark interest rate?
Well, the bet is rather easy. We are going there for the Bank of England. BOE has a tough time because there is two things that happened in the UK. The economy is now prosperous. It grows more than before the financial crisis. Q2 growth was 3.1%. For the year, the IMF expects 3.2% growth. Unemployment has dropped. It is now going to be less than 6% by year end. And the activity is rather strong. The BOE is in no hurry to increase rates. Some are betting that they will come before year end. It's not going to be the case because inflation pressure are not that strong. They are looking at the statistics for, quote, second quarter labor costs actually decreased by 0.2%, which means that the Bank of England can wait before tightening, but a tightening in February is quite probable.
Okay, now you've outlined as well that the Fed could raise their interest rates as early as next spring. Can you outline what data brings you to this?
Well, the Fed has always spoken about increasing interest rates. They start to prepare the people. Already Bernanke had prepared people, but now Janet Yellen is doing it at every meeting and at every speech. They had put two criterion: inflation superior to 2%. They actually look at inflation, the price deflator of the GDP, and there they are still okay at 1.5%. The second criterion was unemployment rate dropping below 6.5%. Since the unemployment rate is now at 6.1%, they have abandoned this criterion because they thought there is still slack in the labor market because the participation rate, i.e. the people active compared to the total population, is at a historical low. However, recently we had strong job creation and the initial jobless claims are extremely weak, which means that the labor market is getting in shape. Another factor that is going to propel basically the increase in interest rates is the fact that labor cost inflation, wage inflation, is now a topic in the US. And there, the Fed does not really like if there is tensions on the wages, because that can, of course, push inflation rather much higher. Last factor: next year there will be changes in the governors that can vote, and some of the new voters are considered as hawks, i.e. people who do not appreciate that the Fed is too supportive to the economy.
And when the Federal Reserve do raise the benchmark interest rate, what significant changes do you see happening in the market?
Well, traditionally, a hike in interest rates is not dangerous for financial markets except for the bonds. It's as long as it is matched by an improving economy, which is the case in the US, and it is gradual and at a very modest rate. I.e., should the Fed go from 0.25 to 2% rather quickly, that would not be, of course, very good, and it would be unnecessary as well. However, going to 0.75 by the end of next year is absolutely no problem. The reaction of the financial markets: investors are always worrying of these increase in interest rates, so they may take some profits on equities to start with, but that is going to be short-lived. On the bond side, of course, they should take profits because without support from the Fed, with an improving economy, interest rates will, especially at the long end, will increase. But on the other hand, you will have a flattening yield curve, i.e. the spread between a 10-year and a 2-year or 3 months will decrease because the Fed acts essentially on the short end of the yield curve. As far as equities are concerned, we may have a change in so-called leadership. We spoke before of the leadership actually being the dividend, the defensive plays, and so on. We should have, with a return of the corporate investment, a return also of the cyclical sectors, more growth-oriented sectors like IT, all the companies that provide capital goods, so there will be a drastic change there. Last change that is quite probable: a strong return of commodities. Commodity prices may spike because companies have not been investing lately, as cost of capital has been, well, actually not really cost of capital, but the cost of new production facilities has exploded, and there were lots of capex left over, which means that supply for certain commodities is going to be rather insufficient. So some commodities like zinc, nickel will benefit, even copper will benefit of strong demand.
Roland, once again, thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome.
And thank you for watching. Do make sure you keep clicking back to Dukascopy TV as we bring you plenty more updates and exclusive interviews. Bye for now.